So let me distill my opinions, my thoughts on this issue. So there has been this debate on social media, off social media, and I read the comments made by the former governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, where he expressed displeasure with the book talking about they should allow President Muhammadu Buhari to rest in peace. You know, I want to say that it's important. Let me start with this. Mm. It's important to note that people are entitled to their opinion. We are entitled to our opinions. It's okay to argue for or against. It's just that it's important to respect the opinions of others who don't agree with you. It's important that I uh, respect the opinion of other people who don't agree with me. And so you as well. When people don't agree with you, so it's important to respect them. Because social media, I see these days that people are quick to insult other people for expressing a differing opinion, which shouldn't be the case. And I've seen that with this issue of Buhari. There's a lot of insults being thrown around, which I feel is unnecessary. People are just expressing their opinions. Late President Muhammadu Buhari is late. He's no longer president. Even while he was president, he was being criticized. You know, and so even though he's no longer with us, it is important to look at certain things he didn't do right, so that we can learn from it. It's just lessons we want to learn from this. If we can't learn from what has happened in the past, then how can we shape what is happening in the present and look ahead to the future? It's important to learn from these things. So one thing that is important, just as people are free now to express their opinions whether for or against, it's also important that the family of Buhari should also have the freedom to express their opinions, to express their views. This book by Charles Omole gave an opportunity for the Buhari's family. Dr. Charles Omole, interviewed Buhari's wife, and I think it should be at length, interviewed Buhari's children. These are people that are still grieving from the loss of President Buhari, you know, like about 6 months ago. They are still grieving. And in grief, one thing that helps is to talk about it, to express yourself. And there may be things in the life of the person who is lost that you are not at peace with, which you talk about. Buhari is a public figure. He was military head of state. He held different positions as minister, and then Petroleum Trust Fund, and then civilian president for 2 terms. He has lived a public life, and there are public records about him. What thing we don't have is, how his family perceives him as a person, how the family perceives his administration and the things he did. We don't have that as things of public record. And because Buhari led a public life, the things he did in his private life also influenced the things he did in the public life. So it's important for his family to be able to have a say, have a voice. If you say what Dr. Charles Omole published is skewed towards what was said by Buhari's wife and Buhari's children, other books have been written about Buhari. Alhaji Lai Mohammed, former information minister, just released a book 2 days after Dr. Charles Omole's own. Femi Adesina, former spokesperson to President Buhari, wrote a book some months ago or so, you know, other people or longer than that, more books will still come. If those who feel so upset by the accounts in this book and they feel that they have a different perspective, come out and say it. And if you want to make it into a book, do that. You know, this one is the perspective of the immediate family, and the immediate family felt they were shut out after the president got into power. That before he got into power, the according to the wife, they could discuss, they could argue about things, and sometimes he defers to her judgment and agrees with her. But that wasn't the case when he became president. He where she, the wife, was shut out, And at the point, her own daughter was advising her, Mama, see, it's best to negotiate with these old guys and see how you can collaborate. And Aisha Buhari said no, he doesn't want to talk to generals, you know. And he said now he sees it as something naive, as something, it was a mistake. So you see the children coming out, the child talked about certificates being official documents, the signature was being forged, that there was a signature stamp. There's a stamp that can be used to sign his signature, and there are documents that were allegedly forged. The certificate was the signature of Buhari was forged. So you see them expressing themselves, saying what they saw, what they witnessed. If you say it's one perspective, fine. What's your own perspective? Write your own book, tell your own story, and let us have it. You know, and according to the author Charles Omole, he said that there were things he didn't add in the book because he felt that he couldn't corroborate it. There are things he heard from a single source that he couldn't corroborate, and so he left it out of the book. And which is the one of the key things in journalism that I've read about. I'm no journalist, but if you watch all these NBC, ABC, this traditional US cable news network, they will tell you that this information is from a single source. If it's so important, they will report it, but with the caveat that the information is from a single source. Otherwise, before they report things, they like to hear from multiple sources. They like to corroborate what they hear. Or sometimes they report it and say this thing cannot be independently verified by NBC, by CNN, by ABC, Force, and all that. So Dr. Charles Omole exercises his journalistic and his professional this thing in seeing that before he included things in this book, there has to be corroboration. He has to discuss with a number of people. So that shows a sense of credibility. And the thing is that not everything that is said by the First Lady and the children, not all of them will be 100% accurate. Some things are opinions. Some things are opinions. For example, now, let me give an example. I'm in the headline. She has said that the reason for Buhari's health issue is nutrition. That is nutrition. She said that the nutrition plan which he had been going well for him for years was ignored when Buhari became president. That when Buhari was sworn in, he called those handling his food, including the SSS, and said he's on a nutritional plan. This and this are what you should give him, this and this and this and that. But that those things were ignored. So when you have yes, nutrition is very important, and nutritional problems can really cause health challenges. If your nutrition is poor, if your nutrition is not well managed, it can cause a lot of problems. But then, when Buhari became very sick, it may not be just about the nutrition. Yes, he talked about nutrition helping him to recover. Yes, nutrition is very important when someone is sick, and it's also very important in recovery. But you must recognize that, if you are working in the health sector, and you have somebody that comes with a chronic illness, with a illness, there are belief systems that people around the person has. There are certain beliefs, certain opinions that they hold. But as a medical personnel, while you take note of what they say, you also look at the objective facts on the ground. You understand? We don't know President Buhari's we don't know, and of course, his medical records are private, they are confidential. You understand? We don't know all that, but what I can guess is that this her talk of the nutrition was the main problem that President Buhari had. I think it's just our opinion. She's not a medical personnel, and she's not one of the health personnel that managed his case in London. And as such, she will not be in a position to actually, say some of these things, right? Dr. Charles Omole mentioned that the author of the book mentioned that President Buhari died from pneumonia, which is something that can happen. Pneumonia in people that are over the age of 65 can be very serious. You understand? And Buhari was 82. So pneumonia, we have a criteria. If somebody is elderly, 65 and above, and the person has some other symptoms, we take their pneumonia very seriously, where the person needs to be hospitalized and given urgent care. You understand? Pneumonia is very serious and it could lead to death. So if pneumonia is what is diagnosed, President Buhari was diagnosed with, considering his age, and considering that he had long-standing issues, you understand, all of that put together, it could actually lead to his death. But the point I'm trying to make is that Aisha Buhari talking about nutrition was the main problem is more or less an opinion of hers. You understand? And which she is entitled to. She's entitled to express her opinion. But I'm saying that opinion doesn't necessarily mean facts. That somebody express an opinion doesn't mean that is the fact. You understand? And of course, full disclosure is not possible because the medical records, medical details are private, they are confidential, which is as expected. So that should be noted. Some things that she said and some things that some people would have said can be tagged as opinions. You understand? Because how do you verify? How do you prove that what this person said was actually so? But you know that people that are closest to him, to the late president, would know some things more than other people. You understand? But you should note that some things are opinions, some things is how the person interprets what happens. So as that being that as his main, people are entitled to express opinions. Even if the opinion is not 100% factual, even if it's not 100% accurate, but it's still okay for them to express their opinion. And if there are now overwhelming evidence to counter that opinion, that evidence can now be brought forward. And then there could be interchange of opinions versus evidence versus facts, and likely the reach a conclusion to that. So it's important that they be allowed to express themselves, which they have so done. And if anyone feels a sense of that, oh, they're not supposed to say this, they're not supposed to say that, there's also room for such persons to express themselves. We're in a democracy. We have a constitution that guarantees rights, freedom of speech and freedom of expression, where people are free to debate issues and not disrespecting people, not insulting people, not calling names, but where people can say, okay, I support A, another person I support B. You that support A, what are your points? You that support B. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that both have to agree, but it's important that people air their concerns and their grievance. Like those who are not happy with the book, fair and good, express your opinion. Those who are not happy with the first family, express your opinion. But then you must respect the family. You must respect the first lady. You must respect the children, and you must acknowledge that they are entitled to expressing themselves. They are entitled to, they are still in grief. They are still grieving. 6 months. 6 months is crucial. After you lose a loved one, that 6 months window is very crucial. Because for persons that have problem adjusting maladaptive maladaptively, those who are not adjusting well to grief, you know, within the first 6 months can still be excused, after which, so they are still in grief. And one thing that surely helps with grief, it's just like facing chronic illness, facing either psychological or physical challenges or financial whatever. One thing that helps is talking about it. Talking about your grievance, what you felt hurt by, what you don't agree with. Talking about it helps. You understand? Then some people will say, oh, if you want to talk about it, then you should have talked to a counselor or talk to a psychologist or talk to a mental health professional if that is the case and stuff like that. The difference you must note that Buhari was a public figure. He was not a private individual. If it's a private individual that didn't live a public life, then we can say that, you know, we may not really be concerned about what the opinions of the family member was or is. But being that Buhari lived a public life and a lot has been said about his life, you understand? When the family choose to express their own view, it has to be made public because Buhari lived a public life. So that point must be borne in mind.